Come on.
Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Monday, September 28th, 2020. And here are our top stories. The common mistakes every cryptocurrency trader makes, and a cryptocurrency exchange is the first to get a U.S. banking charter. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Kevin Kelly. He's the co-founder of Delphi Digital, a cryptocurrency research firm. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Always great talking with you. So, a lot of people, we have been talking about this on the podcast. We've been talking about here on the network for many, many months and years. Cryptocurrency is becoming mainstream, and we're seeing a lot of institutional investors start to use it. They have sophisticated techniques and abilities to do the necessary due diligence. But there are a lot of common mistakes that traders in cryptocurrency make. What can you tell us here, Kev?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try and focus a lot on, obviously with a new, niche type market, one of our big focuses is the education aspect, right? So not only, how to look at these things and potentially how to invest in them, but also what this industry is building, how it kind of relates to the broader crypto space, depending on what the product or the sector is. And then what I think is really important that we're trying to also bring, or I could say bridge the gap for both the crypto native investors as well as traditional investors, is bridging the gap between what happens within the crypto market and what happens outside of it in the more kind of macro, from a more macro lens. Because what you're seeing, and I think the last couple of weeks is a prime example of this, you saw kind of a parabolic rise in equities. We've talked about this on your show before. You had this kind of risk on rally. There was a lot of speculative activity going on, coincided right with a lot of speculative activity going on in the crypto markets. We saw a really big kind of run up in what we consider the DeFi sector, the decentralized finance sector. And now what you've seen over the last couple of weeks with the kind of deflation, I guess you could say, within broader asset prices like stocks, you've actually seen crypto prices come down as well. And so it's not to say that the two are perfectly correlated, one to one, but certainly one of the big themes that we try and hit on or try and convey to clients is understanding what happens in the broader macro lens to put some context around why crypto assets, both at the top of the funnel with Bitcoin, but also further down the smaller crypto assets, why they may be reacting the way in which they are. So that's probably number one, just having a kind of broader sense of what's going on in markets to the best of your ability. The second is also to understand, when you look at, these different assets, there's a lot of different nuances to each of them, right? So not only just kind of their liquidity profile, which basically means, if you see a crypto asset really start to run up, well, if there's only a limited amount of trading volume and it's not really a very liquid market, then you can consider that really just kind of paper gains, right? Because you can't really exit those positions in mass. So understanding the liquidity profile of some of these things, there's a lot of really great data trackers out there now where you can actually see the underlying kind of order books for some of these crypto assets. And then I think just trying to, from a psychological standpoint, not getting too far ahead of yourself, right? It's very easy, and we know better than anybody, when crypto assets when the crypto market really starts to run, it's almost like this very high intensity, euphoric type feeling, because some of these crypto assets have doubled, tripled, or even gone up 5 to 10x. And point being, don't be afraid to take profits at a certain point when, you've if you're fortunate enough to make a large killing on some of these, because again, these things are cyclical, they move in cycles. And what we're seeing now is a lot of these crypto assets that really ran up the last couple of weeks, over the last, call it 2 or 3 weeks, have come down, some by 40, 50, even 60%. And again, these are just the kind of ebbs and flows of a new market, right? You're going to have those euphoric periods. You're going to have those periods in which a lot of sentiment and a lot of leverage is kind of taken out of the market as well. So again, we're not traders by nature, but if you are looking to invest in these things and you have, for whatever reason, a sizable crypto portfolio that you've been able to accumulate, definitely think that, having the discipline to know kind of when to cut bait and when to take some profit on your winners is also extremely important in a market in which, momentum and sentiment is one of the kind of driving narratives or catalysts for prices.
So, Kevin, just for the average investor, someone like myself who has no crypto experience whatsoever and doesn't trade on a regular basis, I mean, is it better to can you go to like a fund of funds to get access, or I think they've killed we don't yet have an exchange traded fund yet for crypto, but I mean, how can the average investor get access to what are obviously important moving markets? They're good diversifiers. How does someone like myself get access?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're really looking to trade or just invest in, again, top of the funnel, Bitcoin, maybe even Ether, native asset of Ethereum, something as simple as a Coinbase, allows you to do all of that, right? Some of the transaction fees aren't exactly the best, and so I would say, for those who are kind of in the more buy and hold mentality, something like a Coinbase account is very simple to set up, links right up to your bank account, and is very intuitive and very easy to use. And they also have some good educational material on there. When it comes to getting exposure to some of the other, we'll call more esoteric kind of crypto assets, that kind of depends on the exchange, right? And one of the things that the crypto market is still a bit plagued with is the just kind of fragmentation of the different exchanges and the liquidity, right? So a certain asset may be trading on one exchange and not on another. And so you have to use specific exchanges to be able to get in and out of or to get exposure to some of these smaller crypto assets. But if you're really just kind of focusing on the Bitcoin and the big kind of, we'll call them the mega caps of the crypto world, something like a Coinbase is I think more than enough for people to get started.
And Kevin, also on the back end, when you sell these products, so you've met all the liquidity restrictions because they're not liquid, as you said, and you actually go and sell. This is something the Internal Revenue Service here in the States, and the Congress. I mean, the regulators are looking at this right now, and they're trying to figure out ways to tax it. I mean, this should not come as a surprise to anybody who's an investor. We have capital gains taxes for traditional assets. But that's something you have to be aware of as well, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a really important point to stress too, because especially in years in which you do have these type of, we'll call them mini bubbles, because I don't think anything that's happening right now is akin to what we saw in 2017 with that massive run up in prices. But I do think it's something really important because that is something you need to take into account when you're buying and selling these different assets. And what's great is that now, as this market has evolved, you now have a number of different services like Lukka Tax, LUKKA Tax, or Token Tax that actually allow you to hook up your exchange accounts to their internal systems to basically allow you to track the potential taxable to your tax bill much easier, right? So you're not, the old days, I'll call them the old days, but only a couple of years ago, you're sitting there basically with an Excel doc and you're trying to track this stuff on your own and knowing where your transactions are, download all that information from these exchanges. There's a lot of products out there nowadays that make it a lot more simple for you to use. But at the same time, to your point, it's something that's it's going to become even more top of mind as we get closer to year end, obviously. But it's something people should certainly start thinking about now. Yeah,
I agree. Well, Kevin, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to unleash the Kraken. And no, I'm not referring to the 1981 movie Clash of the Titans. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM to learn a lot more. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Kevin Kelly of Delphi Digital. Kevin, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. And I think a lot of people who are considerably younger than I, Kevin, will not know my reference to the great movie, Harry Hamlin, Burgess Meredith. There was a Kraken, sea monster. I'm afraid people won't get that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it predates me as well. As soon as you said that, my immediate thought was the newer Pirates of the Caribbean Kraken, which I'm assuming is a very similar type concept. Massive sea monster, scary stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why I brought up the Kraken is, there is a exchange called Kraken that got a U.S. banking charter in the state of Wyoming, and this is the first such event for crypto exchanges. What can you tell us here, Kev? This is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction for sure. One of the things that's kind of plagued the crypto market is the ability for what we call kind of fiat on ramps and off ramps, right? So there's only really a handful of ways in which people can, and I mentioned Coinbase in the prior segment. There's only a handful of real kind of compliant ways in which people can actually take money from what we call the fiat world, right? Or basically pulling from your bank account or a credit card and bringing that and purchasing crypto in a compliant way. And so this Kraken's one of the oldest crypto exchanges out there. So this obviously gives them another leg up in terms of being a potential fiat on-ramp for new crypto users or even existing crypto users. One thing I think that is important to kind of clarify is that it's not a true traditional banking chart. They won't operate as a traditional bank, right? So what this does limit them to, from my understanding, is they're not going to be able to make loans, which again won't require them to have things like FDIC insurance because they're not doing any type of fractional reserve banking, right? All the assets will be backed, 100%. So it is a bit different than what the average person would think of as a traditional bank, but it does allow them to offer a wide array of kind of financial services for, crypto users or non-crypto users who are coming into this market that they otherwise wouldn't have just being an exchange previously.
What does this say, Kevin, to the financial services industry, banks in general, about cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting balance, I would say, because on one hand, you've got a handful of, I would say, banking execs that still are not taking this market seriously because it is very small. And I do think when you think about, technological kind of waves of adoption, right? You have the old saying of first they ridicule it, then they violently oppose it, and then it's just, accepted as kind of almost self-evident. And I don't even think we've gotten to that violently opposed phase yet because there hasn't really been a true challenger to the traditional banking model, right? There's still a lot of limitations around what some of these things can do. And even with Kraken Financial now, there is still limitations around what they can do versus a traditional bank. But what I do think is, again, it pushes in the right direction, right? And what it can potentially do, and what I'm excited to see is it may continue to light a fire under some of these traditional banks to say, okay, we have some challengers or disruptors, coming into our market to challenge us as incumbents. How do we now, maybe it is time that we take crypto a bit more seriously and we start to build around, financial services to serve this clientele, this potential clientele that only has a growing user base.
I think you're right, and I think I'm wondering if this, Wyoming granting this banking charter, even if it is not allowed to do, get FDIC insurance and do a loan, if it actually further legitimizes the crypto markets. We've seen central banks, for example, around the world, not just the Federal Reserve, look at cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, you look at Venezuela, well, they're probably not someone you want to hold out as someone to specifically follow, but I mean, China, Russia, other places around the world that are looking at these digital assets. So does it further legitimize, the marketplace?
No, I definitely think it does, right? And I think, this is going to be a constant game of setting new precedent, right? And this is going to be, again, the first kind of crypto company to get this Wyoming banking charter. There's going to be more to come, certainly, and I think this will also light a fire probably under some of the smaller challengers to somebody like a Kraken. But it's just going to push the industry forward, right? And I think it's going to be a slow race. It's going to be something that just kind of happens. It's going to seem like it happens overnight, but we've been slogging through this kind of regulatory landscape for the better part of 4 or 5 years now when it comes to crypto, and we're really finally just starting to see some of these kind of mainstream financial services companies recognize crypto as legitimate potential up and coming asset class. And so it's going to be a slow climb for sure, but these are these types of moments certainly can serve as maybe accelerants, not inflection points, but accelerants for bringing crypto to a more mainstream audience and more mainstream user base.
And Kevin, I mean, they start in Wyoming, but is it conceivable that they would have banks, and I don't know if it's a brick and mortar bank or they just get their registration there, but their charter there, excuse me. But I mean, would you expect Kraken and others to go and become registered in all 50 states and multiple territories here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so the short answer is I'm not entirely sure. From my understanding of how the Wyoming banking charter works, I believe they are pretty isolated in terms of where they can actually conduct business, or at least limited in terms of what the services that they can provide are, right, which we already talked about. What I do foresee is eventually, obviously, as this becomes more mainstream, a lot of these companies, and Kraken probably being one of the first ones, will get legitimized across the U.S. It's only a matter of time, right? I look at this honestly as similar to the legalization of something like marijuana, right? Which you have a handful of states that are kind of on the front end or really pioneering legislation around this. And eventually it's a matter of, when, not if at this point. I think it's very much the same with, these up and coming crypto financial services companies. But as of now, it's really important to understand, if you're going out and potentially using somebody like a Kraken or a Coinbase or whoever, understanding the legal ramifications around some of this stuff as well. We talk a lot about doing your own due diligence when it comes to what you're actually investing in itself, but also, definitely doesn't hurt to look into the actual infrastructure and the service providers that you're using as well, just to make sure that everything's, okay across the board. Yeah, well, once governments figure out they could tax marijuana transactions, and the same thing with crypto, they're going to be lining up to hand out those banking charters. Well, Kevin, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for dropping by and giving us a little bit of a history lesson and an update on what's happening in crypto. Great to see you, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks, Jeff. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.